So then I came back the next day and met with that guy and pitched him. And he basically said, "What are you doing here? How do I know you?" And pitched him, and he gave me $500,000 that day.
Off a sheet of paper.
Yeah, off a one-sheeter. And told me to spend it as fast as I could and to come back for more once I spent it.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Hustle Up podcast. My name is Clint.
I'm Jonathan.
And Jonathan, do you want to introduce our guest today?
I do want to introduce. This guest is a very close friend of mine. Actually, one of the first, our founding advisor at Streaming Global, which was previously Shouty, has played a big role in my life, has been a role model of mine, has been a confidant, a business advocate, a supporter, everything. He's really supported me along my way. I think he's got a lot of good knowledge, both in all the areas we talk about: mindset, business, fitness, and relationships. Those are what we cover on Hustle Up. Okay. He's got his own podcast called Deep Dive, which you can listen to on Spotify. He sits at the top of ATDC, which he'll tell you about, but it is one of the premier incubators in Atlanta, and he connects those companies with Fortune 500, Fortune 100 companies. And I don't want to spoil it too much more, but Corbett, great to have you, man.
Thank you, man, for that introduction.
Yeah, I mean,
sounds like you're the man.
He is the man. It comes from the heart, man. And shout out Peter Velarde for the introduction.
Yeah,
Nick,
Peter
if you're listening. Yeah, Peter V.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. So, I guess give whatever I missed out on, give us a little background. I know your history goes all the way back in business. We talk about the .com boom and everything forward. So
I guess we'll start from the beginning. So we'll go into the early mid-'90s.
Yeah.
Reading about eBay, reading about Amazon, all these companies that were just coming out of nowhere, going public and raising money. So I started reading Forbes magazine, trying to figure out how to raise money. How do companies raise money? What is that? And
you're in college at this point?
In college, about to graduate, and started putting together some plans on what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to start a company, and I knew I wanted to go out and raise money and find something in the e-commerce space. So back then, I think it was around 96, 97, it was still difficult to raise money here in Atlanta. In the Southeast, you usually had to go out west and to San Francisco and those areas. Ended up putting together this e-commerce site called execroom.com, and really I sold executive luggage. So imagine a Palm Pilot case, portfolio folders, those types of things. Found this gourmet coffee, so I was just trying to find all these creative things and then put them into this onto this site. Well, needed some money, so I had a one-pager I put together. Went around Atlanta and basically went to every building in Buckhead because I knew there was a lot of investment groups there, and went in, looked at the kiosk, and saw all the financial institutions that were there. Would go in and would pitch to the gatekeeper, is what they called the person at the front desk.
Yeah, the person that was there to keep you out.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So you're cold approaching, door knocking to high level VCs and financial institutions.
And yes, and a lot of it was I was naive about what I was walking into because I was so fired up.
Yeah.
I was 23 years old, and I walked into this mahogany room type office. It was really, everybody was wearing suits, and it felt really Wall Streety. And so I walked to the person at the desk and pitched what I was doing. And then right as I was doing that, the phone rang, and they picked it up. And I looked down on the folder and saw a name upside down. I was reading her folder. And she came back, and I said, I'm here to meet so-and-so. And they looked on the calendar, and I wasn't on there. They apologized, and then so they could get me in tomorrow. So then I came back the next day and met with that guy and pitched him. And he basically said, "What are you doing here? How do I know you?" And pitched him, and he gave me $500,000 that day.
Off a sheet of paper.
Yeah, off a one-sheeter. and told me to spend it as fast as I could and to come back for more once I spent it. So that led this whole process of really pivoting that model of what I had into more of a social media company for attorneys and business people, which social media didn't exist. We called it having your own personal website. And this was a time when a lot of people didn't have websites. So I had developed strategic relationships with the Washington Post, Reader's Digest, to pipe in content to these websites. And so we went about, and I built this sales team, and we had an office down in the Buckhead area, and really grew that company focused on that, building websites for individuals so they could communicate past deals back and forth. So it's sort of a version of LinkedIn.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
So, got through that. Around 2000, the market overnight just tanked and went out. And my investors plucked me out. I ended up selling the assets of that company. They plucked me out and wanted me to work for them. They had a large incubator and wanted me to manage and advise the companies in the portfolio through this whole downturn in the market. And so, one of the biggest companies we had was realestate.com. And so I was on the team that was able to foreclose on their assets and sell them to Barry Diller. And
who's that?
He owns Lending Tree and a bunch of companies, whole conglomerate of companies.
Oh, wow.
So he started Home Shopping Network.
Oh, okay.
And,
yeah.
So he's got a long track record. So we did that. And then for the first part of the 2000s, I spent a lot of time jumping around to investment banks, boutique investment banks, looking at deals and jumping into underperforming companies that were in portfolios primarily of private equity firms, and helping them to pivot their model and really propel them to growth.
Is the term for that an entrepreneur in residence?
It was, but that didn't really exist at that time.
Okay.
So it was almost a consultant where I would, because I played a lot of roles, getting in, analyzing the company, and then identifying assets that we could bring forward or sell off, things that we could pivot to really move into another market to really propel growth.
How did you immerse yourself in that? Because just take a brand new company. What did you do to get in and analyze problems or strengths, and how did that work?
There's really no cookie cutter way, but for a real general rule of thumb, I would go in and look at the sector that the company was in, and really get an understanding of what the potential was and where that sector was, and where that company was positioned. What special IP or what differentiated them from other competitors in the market. And after I looked at that and analyzed that, then I looked at the team that was there and what hindrance some of the team we put in place to, it could be a bottleneck in the C-level or a BD or a business development VP or innovation person that wasn't allowing things to flow through, and which prevented them from getting more market share and growing.
Did you ever see the opposite of that, companies that excelled because of their culture or anything that stood out in particular?
I did, and it's that's always tricky, because I look at the corporate culture internally of a company. Mm. So when I'm looking at innovation and looking at launching a pilot, it has a lot to do with that corporate culture internally, because a lot of times they want to start and do it their own from within innovation instead of going out and looking externally and finding innovative companies they can bring in and launch a pilot to. And so same thing with this. You could sort of tell once you got in and interviewed and started talking to some of the management what they they may have seemed innovative from the outside, but once you got in, they really weren't innovative, and they weren't allowing innovation in that process to move, which was preventing their growth and movement.
Probably
in the
one or
market.
two key leaders or bottlenecks in that
Yes.
regard.
And today you see there are some major companies that are out there that the C level is the bottleneck, and innovation floats up and it stops. But you think they're innovative because they have innovation centers and they invest heavily in those areas, but true innovation isn't able to flow because innovation really is collaboration.
Yeah.
Amongst
Key takeaway: listen to your team.
exactly.
Just as an example, since I got you here, and give me the good, the bad, and the ugly. When you came in, you're the founding advisor for my first company. When you came in, how did you audit that situation to decide whether you wanted to get involved or not with a bunch of 22, 23-year-olds?
Yeah. Well, what interests me there was looking at the model of the company, and at that point you wanted to be a Snapchat type company for sports.
Yeah.
And so right off the bat I knew that wouldn't work, just from the standpoint of the acquisition costs.
Yeah.
And how much it would cost to get a consumer to use your app. I mean, it's one thing to get them to download the app. It's another thing to get them to come back over and over to that app and utilize it. And you got to sort of get into that as a behavioral thing.
Yep.
And so I knew that right there, unless we raised $100 million, that was a big obstacle. But I liked the team, and I liked and I've mentioned that to you before, the enthusiasm you had, and it reminded me of that time when I was knocking on those doors,
Yes, sir.
going in to pitch to these companies, these financial institutions, where you knew you wanted to do something and you were going to do it no matter what, and you were going to find a way, even if that was the wrong way, find the way to get in there and make something work. So I saw that, so I liked that, and I knew that would work. So then the other team members had the same, work ethic as well.
Yeah.
And you were all a unit, and you lived in the same house, and it was this whole
It was
culture.
this whole ecosystem incubator.
Yeah, it was this whole culture that was just really interesting, and I really liked it. And so, after getting in, and then us having some, shared interests, we talked about Gary Vee and some of these people that influenced us, and then I know we talked right off, early on about streaming and what I was doing with a European company.
Well, and that ties back to what you were your consultancy at a
Right.
VC, because you were pitching a company in Switzerland, was it?
Yeah. I worked for a family office in Switzerland. They were based in Geneva, Switzerland, and they had several companies in their portfolio. And I came in to really get their first one, which was a collaboration software, off the ground and launch it throughout North America and Europe. And so I did that for several years, and then they moved me out of that and put me into a streaming company. They wanted me to do the same thing. So what I did, I pivoted that model and wanted to do more of a multi-perspective view of sports, but wanted to do sports. I wanted to follow along the Red Bull movement and go into BMX, surfing, skateboarding.
Yeah.
That whole group that had a large social following. They were filming a lot of the stuff they were doing, but they weren't monetizing that in any way.
What's that?
The
event?
content they were creating.
Yeah.
So they were sort of at the
That Venice
YouTube.
Beach, tip of the spear cultural movement. Yeah, it's almost rebellion, anti-establishment.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And
Tech culture.
YouTube controlled the content, and,
Yeah.
how much they were getting paid and all that. I wanted them to be able to sell merchandise and other things through that. So went out and started developing this platform that allowed them to do the multi-perspective live stream, had editing tools and all of that built into the app, and then also a social commerce component that allowed them to sell merchandise, tickets, We had a paywall for rehearsals for bands, and a bunch of different things like that. And right at that time is when I met you, because I thought there was a strategic relationship there for that. And really, we just went off and continued to, we did a lot of strategy meetings and
on the
trip to New
whiteboard.
York and
that was cool.
Yeah.
No, it was cool having, because you watch, like, and we always said you were like our Sean Parker, but the nice one.
Oh, yeah.
Or like the one that's not going to screw you over. And that was always a thing. And I'm sure you've dealt with this as well, Clint, like being a young cat in the business world, like trying to get big broed by people. And like, people look at your age and your lack of experience and try and take advantage of that. I was talking with one of my buddies, and he's got these mentors from a college we went to, and he said that he's asked them for pricing on things, and they're like, yeah, I'll give you the homie hookup, or you've been family of mine, I got you. And then they give him their quotes, and then he goes and price checks it, and he's getting overcharged in comparison to people he doesn't know. And it's something that, I'm sure you experienced it too when you were young and talking to these different investors. And so it was perfect to have you on the team and in that capacity. And it was really cool. And it was affirming that you had kind of wanted to be a part of it as well. And that's why I was interested. I never really knew like why. What was the draw? Like, there's a lot of companies, you're in the ecosystem, and so it was interesting to hear that. But enough about me. I want to take it back to something you said. You said that the investors told you spend $500,000 as quickly as you can. Mm-hmm. Why? Is it a fail fast, fail often, or what is it?
The mentality at that stage of the .com boom was they had investors. They gave the money out and wanted you to spend it to come back for more. And then hopefully with these overinflated valuations that people were getting and going public with, pre-revenue, that would happen.
Yeah.
So it was almost a Hail Mary.
Yeah.
It was, spend it, let's see what you can do. And if you can make this into a $100 million company in 6 months, let's do it. And that's really the mentality. And, now we're more sophisticated when it comes to venture capital investing, where you still see some of that in other areas.
Like Uber, Snapchat.
Right, where they just come out and now they're called unicorns, and people can identify that. But everything was so new at this stage, and that's why some of our recent conversations around cryptocurrency. That's why I get so excited about that, because it is a similar feel as it was back then.
To the .com boom.
Yeah, the .com, because I don't know what you guys were doing at that stage, but
being born.
It was, it was, everybody was doing it. Everybody was buying a URL, starting a website. I got a friend that at that time he learned how to do simple HTML for a website, and he's making $2 million, $3 million a year doing websites for companies that decided they needed a website. And it was that kind of rush, and a lot of companies coming out of nowhere that meant nothing. They had no model, but they were raising money.
Do you see that kind of tank coming for crypto?
I don't, because it like I said, it's more sophisticated. And with crypto, there is a lot of buzz that you've seen the market over the weekend. It dipped with some of the regulation talk and those types of things. Mm-hmm. But I think the underlying technology is what is going to keep it moving, or at least plateaued, if it doesn't even move up, if it doesn't skyrocket. But mass adoption is what we're going to be seeing next.
You see that with PayPal, Goldman Sachs,
Venmo, is accepting it now. Now you're seeing companies that are starting to accept it. Banks, institutions are starting to move in. Like you said, Goldman, they're putting some of their big clients in. So when that starts happening, that's mainstream. And I really don't see any going back once those types of companies start talking about it and mentioning it in the press.
Yeah. Even Amex, 24 million, or no, I think that was PayPal. With PayPal came 24 million vendors that can now accept it. The only thing I question about is Tesla, right? So if you buy Tesla and Bitcoin, you have to pay capital gains on that. So does it almost make it not worth it how does it make it worth it to spend crypto?
Yeah.
In a commoditized way.
And, that's a whole nother ballpark when it comes to the accounting aspects of it, capital gains, the whole taxation of crypto. Yeah, there's a lot of different types of currencies within crypto. Everybody focuses on Bitcoin. Ethereum, we were just talking about, that's one that's interesting because it's there's other applications that could be utilized, within that. And, in really looking at the underlying technology and how that can revolutionize supply chain, retail, and, different sectors. That's amazing. Yeah. And we've been talking about blockchain for years, but really haven't seen any movement on mass adoption of it.
Real use cases.
Right.
Outside of a white paper.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think the foray into that is this more acceptance of crypto, and then we're seeing the NFT movement that's happening. So people are understanding, wow, okay, you can do this. And what's been interesting is on Bloomberg and CNBC and all these publications, you're finding how-to guides on how to open up a wallet, a crypto wallet. Yeah. How to buy your first cryptocurrency, and why you need to, and sort of educating the public. And that's, to me, is a good sign of mainstream. If you're here, you're in the right place. Yeah. And keep doing what you're doing.
We talk about all the time. YouTube University is gonna educate the next wave of entrepreneurs.
Well, just take that YouTube University like archetype, and you could throw the Reddit guys in there too. Yeah. Look to how they're already influencing. Like this YouTube University is like, there's so many thought leaders that you can follow that are just technological people that know how to move around the internet to find information that works and create communities. And that's what you saw with the GameStop situation. That's what you've seen with the pumps of cryptocurrency and NFTs. Is it's this YouTube University, Reddit, influencer, internet, perfect word for it. It's that internet culture disrupting what has otherwise been a very static industry or economic or socioeconomic way of life for a long time. Right. And it's fascinating because YouTube University for us used to just mean, if you want to learn how to do something, you don't need to hire someone, just go onto YouTube and learn it. But now it's showing how on a macro scale, it's disrupting markets and even the financial market. And it's really insane. What's that? What's your perspective on that? The GameStop thing, and are you familiar with what happened?
Yeah, I am. And that was interesting, just sitting back and seeing how a platform like that could be used to advocate, in large groups of people following and doing something in uniform, such
and disrupting billion-dollar entities
and tricking, in some cases, hedge funds and some of these supposedly smartest people in the room.
That's what it is,
and that's what was fascinating me, was seeing how that worked and how easy it was for that to happen, and when will it happen again? Well, what will it be?
Maybe it's like that was the first one to break the barrier, and now internet culture has seen what it can do in a real financial market. Right. And so now it might be more common practice and less of an anomaly.
And that's what really started giving me even more confidence in crypto, because the same people that were doing that are in the crypto space also. Yep. And so no matter what the governments say about it, they're still going that way. And they're the ones they're the market movers like institutions usually are.
Do you think that crypto has the ability to overthrow the fiat currency?
I think there's, I mean, that's an interesting thought. I think there could be a possibility.
I mean, look at the value of the dollar since World War II.
Right.
It literally stays like this. Like, I don't know. I think, keep going. This is
No, I think you're right.
As we moved industry out of America.
What do you mean?
As we moved our manufacturing out of America, the value of the dollar steadily declined.
I'm sure there's a bunch of factors. That definitely sounds like a lion's share factor for sure.
Yeah. That and printing money.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is the centralization.
And, looking at the printing money, the stimulus, the trillions that are going out, and which continues to bring the dollar down in value. And then not to mention the globalization of crypto and the acceptance of being able to utilize it in other regions of the world compared to your country currency and then exchanging it and doing it how we've traditionally done it.
I hear a lot of people say that it's like Monopoly. We'll just make more money. Mm-hmm. It's not real. It's all made up. But I cannot wrap my head around that. Somebody's gotta pay the price, right?
Right. Yeah.
Eventually.
Yeah.
The hope is that it's not in my lifetime or not in my kid's lifetime, but the bill must toll, correct?
Yeah, you're right.
Are you talking about for USD or for crypto?
Dollar.
Yeah,
the
USD. Dollar. Yeah, you're right, and that's, you look at over history. It was take the Romans. That civilization rose up. They were taking the world over, and they went bankrupt. And now we go see the ruins of that civilization. And I don't want to say we're in the same boat, but we are moving to a point where it's you can't possibly get back because of the massive amounts of a debt, which trickles down to other parts of the economy. And printing money isn't the solution, which some people believe.
It's a short-term solution.
It's a Band-Aid.
Exactly.
But there's always a reckoning.
That's just a flesh wound.
Yeah. Nah, it's interesting because I think like a lot of countries are going to be hit with a decision of, do you regulate with crypto or do you try and ban it? Mm-hmm. And if the United States, for example, tried to ban it, they're losing the opportunity to tax billions and billions of dollars.
And I think with companies like Goldman, these institutions, with retail, and as they are stepping up saying, we're going to accept it.
Institutions that pay the politicians.
That have lobbyists, exactly, right.
That's what is going to push the government, I believe, to go ahead and bring it and adopt it in some way, shape, or form.
Well, you look at everyone who says they're going to ban it, with the exception of Turkey, who has so far not resent that. But India, they keep talking about banning it. Then they see the amount of money they're going to lose if they move forward with a full-on ban. I just don't think it's something that would behoove a country.
It's sort of, another taboo topic is, legalization of marijuana in some of these states, and looking at that as a tax windfall for some of these, California and Colorado and some of those states that have legalized it. It opens up a whole nother tax opportunity for them to bring in billions of dollars in tax dollars.
Yeah. Let's pivot a little. I want to know about ATDC. What is ATDC? What do you do over there? And that'll lead me into another question.
Yeah, ATDC, we are a state-funded technology incubator.
What does it stand for?
Advanced Technology. I'll come back to that. I never say that. It's a 1980s term.
Okay.
So it's give me a second, I'll remember. But it's we're the state of Georgia's technology incubator, and so we basically have our office here in Atlanta with satellite offices around the state, in Savannah, Augusta, Athens, Macon, and then here in Peachtree Corners, and then also at Georgia Tech's campus. And what we do, we have curriculum built around what we do, which is really how to start a company. So we have various levels. So our entry level membership is called Educate. We have roughly 600 companies in that space. And we have curriculum on how to incorporate your business, how to develop your cap table, how to raise money.
This is pre-funding. If I'm an Educate company, haven't made revenue probably, haven't gotten any funding.
You have a piece of paper with an idea.
Okay.
And we teach you how to do everything and to flush that idea out to get it to an MVP. And
which stands for minimum viable product.
Correct. So once that happens, we have 30 staff members, full-time staff members at ATDC. And we're all entrepreneurs, have taken companies public, have just done all different types of things. We're industry experts. And so once you are ready to move to the middle tier level, you have your MVP, you're taking customers on. You go through a process to get a sponsor at ATDC. So that's basically a mentor or a coach.
Okay.
And that mentor is one of the full-time staff members, and they will work with you over the next 2 to 3 years to help you flush out your business and help you grow that business.
Is that you? You follow it? You're a mentor?
I'm not a mentor. I run a program, which is the Industry Connect program.
Okay.
And I bring in Fortune 100, Fortune 500 companies in, and I'll go through the process of what I do with them. But really the initiative is to launch pilots, to get our companies in pilots with some of the biggest companies around.
Can you give an example that you're not under NDA for, or like don't leave names out, but just to give some context to what that means?
Yeah, I roughly launch anywhere from 16 to 20 pilots a year. And so like last year, AB InBev, 3M, Honeywell, those are some of the companies we launched with. The 3M opportunity was a predictive maintenance platform. So they have a transportation part of their business. They run trains, and they build the engines, and they needed to make sure that those never failed. So they were looking for a technology that would do that. We had it at ATDC.
Use AI to find the problem and solve it before the problem happens.
Yep. And it would analyze the vibrations and all of the signals that all the equipment was putting off.
That's badass.
And run it through a program. And so we launched a pilot, and it was several $100,000. What's good is we take none of that money. It all goes to our companies. And so that really helps the companies propel and to raise money and to continue to be sustainable. And so that's an example. I also ran a supply chain with AB InBev Brazil pilot, and that was more of a AI-infused supply chain platform where it would monitor raw materials that were in the warehouses. So a company could have 10,000 of these and 10,000 of something else, but it really was that, but it was labeled wrong in the system. This AI would figure that out. And it was funny, one of our meetings, we ran a real-time test with some of the data that AB InBev gave us. And they had close to $20 million of materials sitting on their shelves they didn't know about.
Wow, that's crazy.
So that sense has gone from one pilot at one facility to all of Brazil, just because they were able to see during that test phase that the technology worked.
What are some do's and don'ts of companies at a stage where, well, you said it's called Interconnect?
Industry Connect.
Industry Connect. If I'm just getting into the Industry Connect program, and am I a middle tier startup at that point, or am I like?
It all depends. If you already have your MVP and you have a few clients, then you can come in and be accepted into the Accelerate level, which is our middle tier.
Okay.
So you don't have to start at the educated level.
Correct. And then the other misconception is that you got to be a Georgia Tech student to be a part of it. Anybody in the state of Georgia can be a member of ATDC.
But it is funded by Georgia Tech, right?
No,
Partially?
it's funded by the state.
Okay. It's on Tech's campus?
We sit on Tech's campus.
Okay.
It was actually spearheaded. The creation of it was spearheaded by Georgia Tech. So we're actually considered the oldest technology incubator in the country. Just turned 40 last year.
Wow.
What is the qualification process like if let's say you have your MVP and you decide you want to get involved with ATDC? How does that happen, and what qualifications are you looking for?
Qualification, we have sponsored verticals. So we have a fintech, a retail tech, healthcare, advanced manufacturing, and our newest, which is 5G, 5G vertical. That's sponsored by T-Mobile. And so we go out and look for companies that throughout the state that are in that space, that are doing interesting things within those areas.
So you guys are reaching out directly.
We do a lot of recruiting.
Yeah.
There's a lot of times where companies will find us and do their research, but we do events. I mean, all kinds of events.
Is that your main form of recruiting? That's how you find people?
Yeah, and we do a lot of social things on social media, a lot of content. Hence the deep dive podcast that I do, and a lot of things like that to create some attraction and to create some deal flow of companies coming in wanting to know more on what we do. I have a tremendous amount of deal flow of companies that just want me to connect them to enterprises, and then I get to pitch them ATDC. This is how you take advantage of this program.
Yeah,
is you come in, become a member, and you fit into the Accelerate or our signature level, which is our top tier, and then that's how it works through that.
What are some do's and don'ts? I'm sure you see a lot of pitches. What are some of the do's and don'ts for people who are pitching their company, be it for a pilot with a Fortune 100 or a high net worth individual, VC? What are some do's and don'ts for pitching?
Yeah, we talking about VCs, we have a venture capital arm as well, which is called the Investor Connect.
Okay.
And really, some of the do's and don'ts when you're pitching an investor is, number one, have a deck that is 8 to 10 slides. And one of the things that I always hate seeing is you'll take a market segment that could be, let's say, 20 billion, and you say, if I could just get 1% of this, and you start reflecting that in your revenues, that's one thing that.
If we just get a little piece of this
we
pie,
can just get a sliver, a 0.5%, we can make $100 million our first year. Those types of things, stay away from.
Yeah, boy, you're optimistic.
Right? Because projections are what they are. They're projections, and if they're overinflated, it looks good. You think that, but really, it's it's a pie in the sky type approach. If you are meeting a need, if you see a sector that has a specific need, and you zero in on one little piece of that instead of trying to cover the whole thing. That is another. Be laser focused.
Yeah.
And in that, and I think being able to pitch and not seem to be so green when you're pitching.
Not seem to be so green, like
VCs,
money hungry.
Well, no, just not have done it before.
Come correct.
Yeah.
Practice in front of the mirror.
Don't be
Yeah.
nervous.
Yeah, you
Hold
got to be
frame.
smooth. You got to be able to relay the elevator pitch, and be able to hook them and get them in. to really build. And the elevator pitch. Let me tell you a story about that. I was doing a fintech company around 2008, and I had heard that Tim Draper of Draper Fisher was a keynote speaker here in Atlanta at a venture event, and I knew what hotel he was in. I went and sat in the hotel and waited for him to come out. He came out. I jumped up, ran over, gave him the 60-second pitch, which always has to have the hook to bring him in. And he asked for a second meeting because of that. And that really taught me the importance of an elevator pitch. 60 seconds. If you don't have the hook, they're going to say, okay, because they see 100 of those a week. And if you don't have something that differentiates you from the others, you're not going to get the call back.
What are some tips for creating a elevator pitch that'll hook?
I think it's keeping it simple, is painting the picture in a simple way of what you're trying to accomplish and what your technology or service or whatever you're doing does.
I think you also want to add in, you don't want to show all of your cards in the initial pitch. If possible, you want to lead potential investors to ask you the questions that you want them to ask you.
Right.
And that does require some finesse.
Yeah, and that's part of the hook, is to get them to ask you questions and start pulling it out of you, where you have them on the hook.
I'm glad you asked.
Yeah. It's the same thing with writing. I'm taking an English course right now just because I feel like I'm weak in that area and want to be better. And it's like every line you write has to entice your reader to want to read the next line. And it's the same in conversation. And, I know there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there, because I was one too, still kind of am, where I just talk too much. I just tell you, like you're saying, I don't leave that room for speculation or cliffhanger, if you will. I tell you what the problem is. I tell you what the solution is. I tell you what the business model is, what the projected revenues are.
You know how to land the plane.
All in one foul swoop. Yeah, exactly. in under 10 seconds. And it leaves no. So I'm like, that's something I'm just learning right now. And I think that's an important message that you brought up and that you were talking about in the elevator pitch for entrepreneurs listening to hear is, don't tell everything. Don't get married on the first date. Don't tell them everything, that exists about your company. You want to leave like little breadcrumbs that bring them back for the next bit of information.
And then also, raising money and being in that position, if you're not baked and have your product fully baked and ready to go, it makes it hard, because you're pre-revenue. If you can't show the product, like Streaming Global, for example, showing that product, showing how it works, that speaks more than a pitch, because you can actually see the need, and the technology meets that need and is a solution.
Absolutely.
Think about the best Shark Tanks. They say, yeah, but where's your product? He says, no, we have the product. It's ready to go. Right? It's uncovered after the question.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's pivot to, you're married with 4 kids?
Yeah, 4 kids.
4 kids. Yeah. And what's the oldest?
Oldest is 10.
Youngest is
4.
I remember when you had her.
Yeah. The boy.
Boy had him, yeah. And you've been married for how long?
In June will be 22 years.
Wow. How do you balance that? You've got your whole life at ATDC, and then you have a family, a large family.
Yeah, I mean, part of the reason I went to ATDC was, when you're in corporate America or doing what I did with these family offices and traveling so much, you're never there and you're always away. And really, I wanted to really rebuild my life and be more of a family person and not so much of a superstar corporate person.
Yeah.
Because I've seen guys that have done that, and it looks so good. I always thought I wanted that. But once you get down into it, it's not fun. There's a lot of things you don't see behind the scenes. And I wanted that, and that sticks with your kids, too, as they grow up and they never see you, and they don't
They're always
know you.
watching.
Yeah, they're watching, and then you miss out on so much. So I wanted to try to do something different and step back, join ATDC, which allows you to be able to have that work-family life balance. That's what I liked. You do take a little bit of a cut when it comes to compensation and some of that, but that can be made up through consulting and some of the other investments and things that I've done. Luckily, I did early on to be able to prepare for this. But
was that out of you premeditatedly knew at some point I'm going to be wanting to focus more on as a family man, so I need to go harder right now?
I didn't know that, but what always worried me was being dependent on a job.
Yeah.
And being in a position, no matter where you were in a corporate position, and that being my livelihood, and then that being cut off because I had no control over it, and not having any other type of income. So early on, I read the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, and he talks about these multiple streams of income, and particularly real estate, and that really resonated at positioning yourself, because it takes time to build it, but positioning yourself with assets that grow in value, but also kick off some type of revenue or cash flow monthly, and because that sort of takes the stress of worrying about that corporate job. Did I do that right? Was I here on time? And that whole mindset sort of takes the stress off.
Yeah.
So that it worked well doing that early. So when I did have a family, because when I first got married, my wife, she was in corporate America, so we'd get up and go our separate ways and come back or meet out somewhere at night. And it was a different lifestyle than it is with kids.
Yeah.
It sort of throws you in a whole different realm.
For sure. That's wild. So I mean, obviously that was smart of you to, because my dad lost his job, for old age, and he actually took that to court and won. And it just showed me early on that you could work somewhere for 25 years and be damn good at what you do and still get cut like you're, a rookie trying out for a football team.
Right.
And you're on special teams and they just don't need you. Gone.
Right.
And it just showed me, I was like, that it seems safe, it seems secure until the boss decides don't need you. And then you realize it's a facade and then it's too late.
Well, until it becomes a situation where it's no longer a win-win, right? At any point, if it's a win-lose, somebody gets cut and then you were dependent. You didn't realize it.
And you look at how much automation is taken over now. That's
right. And also I look at it as doing that is also an entrepreneurial thing.
Yeah.
Because entrepreneurs usually, if they don't come out of school or out of, as they're growing up wanting to be one, an event happens in their life where a bad experience at work or they're fired or something like that, and they decide, okay, I got to do something. I don't want to put my trust in this job. I want to create something myself that I can control and grow and is unlimited. And that is sort of the mindset of an entrepreneur. So I think this goes along the same lines of, creating these other revenue streams to sort of take that control back and not have to, because it's gut wrenching. I've known people that have been at a job for 30 years.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden they wipe out Coca-Cola.
Yeah.
I knew someone that was there 30 years. At one point, they were letting go entire floors in the Coke building.
IBM, same thing.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's scary. Nobody cares. You're a number.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm always on the prowl looking for other things to get involved in, other things to invest in, and to get into and not let things pass me by.
How many streams of revenue do you currently have?
Right now, I have 3, And a big part of it is real estate, where I really believe in those assets and the appreciation in that. Crypto's one. Also, I have some other alternative investments in companies that do various things. But I'm looking for. I don't want to have too many. You hear people say you got to have 7.
Yeah.
Got to have 5. I like to stick around 4 to 5, just so they're manageable.
Yeah.
And you can really stay in it and know and understand it and sort of grow with it, and not just ignore it.
That's cool.
How important is I know you do martial arts. What do you do in martial?
Yeah. Well, I've done Bondo, which
What's
is a Burmese form of martial arts, but it's mixed with jiu-jitsu and a bunch of other judo, a bunch of other martial arts. And so I do a lot of boxing. There's a lot of Muay Thai boxing in Bondo.
Okay.
So I do that, but one of my regimens that we've talked about is Kettle Bells. I love Kettle Bells. And just because the mobility aspect of it, the core strength that you build, and then really the movement, because it's different than a straight bar or a dumbbell, where you can move around more like you would in a daily fashion, picking something up, moving around.
It's more practical.
More practical, and people always say, one of the things is people talk about farm boy strength,
Right.
and and really that comes from going over, picking up a bale of hay, bending over, picking it up, moving it, putting it on a platform, and doing things like that are functional.
Yeah.
And kettlebells are functional, and so that works. I've seen a tremendous movement just in what my mobility, and plus it wears you out. I mean, it is hardcore. Joe Rogan talks about kettlebells, and
You've been talking about them since as long as I knew you. I was in the gym the other day, and we have a kettlebell section, and I thought of you actually, and I Googled workouts to do with kettlebells, and it pulled up this picture of just every different exercise. It really, you can work out every part of your body with kettlebells.
Yeah.
It was very interesting. So obviously fitness is a key part for you. How do you maintain mental durability, mental fitness?
Part of working out to me is mental fitness. That helps me to really focus on what I'm doing and take off the stress of the day, and to really get that mindset. I like to do it in the morning. Mm-hmm. Get the mindset of what I got to do that day. And I'm thinking about that. And I'm listening to music and stuff like that as I go. But, I have a combo of kettlebells and then also cardio that I do. So all of that, it does a lot to you. It makes you feel good physically. It makes me be able to blow off the stress and the steam needed and to refocus. And then it helps me deal with, other people that I'm working with in the day. Mm-hmm. So, it's something that I got to do.
Yeah.
I if I don't do it, I don't feel well. I don't feel good at all.
Your physical fitness is what helps you create that mental durability.
Yeah.
Yeah. And definitely, you're big on using it like that too. Like working out means like working out your demons or working out the
Training
low
the
frequency.
body is about training the mind.
Yeah.
Because there's so many pieces of mental toughness. I've read a lot about that, particularly Navy SEALs write books. Jocko did a book about that, and mental toughness. It starts with me. It starts with the physical aspect, because a lot of times you get to a point where you're like, I can't do this. I can't do one more rep, and pushing through it and not allowing your body or your mind to.
They don't know
stop
me,
you.
son mode. They don't know.
Are
me,
you
son.
familiar with that? Do you know who David Goggins is? Yeah. He taught me that. Because that's true. And I like that too, because When you take that microcosm to push yourself one little step further on a world view, it shows you can go further than you think you can because you've done it once. If I do it once, I can do it again. If I've done it like this, I can do it like that.
Right. And it translates to so many other factors of life too. When you get used to pushing yourself and getting comfortable being uncomfortable, dwelling in pain, struggle becomes the purpose. Struggle becomes the journey, becomes the destination.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's, it's also one that, as you age, for me, it's one I don't want to lose what I had when I was younger physically. Mm-hmm. So that's what drives me because I look around at, people my age, I'm 47, and people change. It's just a different look.
Yeah, no,
which I don't want. People call it the dad bod, and that's what keeps me wanting to keep going and try to physically keep maintained and keep that up, because once you let it go, it's so hard to get anything back.
Yeah, like money, it's hard, so much easier to spend than it is to earn.
Yeah.
Weight, anything like that.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, we're gonna be wrapping up here, but tell me about Deep Dive. What is Deep Dive? Why'd you get started?
Yeah, Deep Dive. It started about a year ago with me thinking about what I wanted to do, and I knew that I was in a special place with ATDC because I was meeting with these enterprises, with the innovation leaders and sometimes the C-levels, and was really taking a deep dive. I always called it a deep dive meeting into their corporate culture internally, into what their idea around.
And these are
innovation.
Fortune 100 companies.
Yeah. These are Goldman Sachs and AT&T and all of these groups.
I gotta know, did you often find or ever find a disconnect between where the C-level thought that their corporate culture was and what everybody else thought it was?
Oh yeah. And I even had seen it where the C-level thought one way, but the innovation arm of the company had a whole different way they were moving. Yeah. And that's why nothing ever happened.
I find that aspect is fascinating.
Yeah. And that's what really turned me on to the deep dive on trying to explore all the different areas within. So like the C-level, the innovation arm, the BD person, and really understanding the whole ecosystem within the corporate entity and how it worked. And then as I'm doing that, identifying decision makers within each of these different business units.
Yeah.
And then once we've identified areas, and maybe it's supply chain that they're looking for, then understanding what business unit they wanted to utilize that in, and then how that would work. Giving me some use case scenarios. So after doing those deep dives, that helps me go back to our 150 companies at ATDC and start to match up companies. So with that process, I was like, wow, I got a bunch of good information that people always ask me.
Yeah.
I need to do a podcast to start branding that and start really building around those topics and have some conversation around it. And then bringing in industry experts, and in some cases the ones that I'm actually talking to at these companies, and do a podcast. And I could use that and repurpose it in various areas. Plus, it's good on the ATDC side for recruitment and awareness and those types of things.
So I like it because you sit at the intersection of Fortune 100 corporations and startup incubator companies.
Right.
And you relay information back and forth, and you find the commonalities and leverage your network and connections you make doing that to disperse information in a digestible way, passive way.
Exactly. And, I try to keep the format informal, so a free flow conversation. We did it.
Yep.
And I will cross between having entrepreneurs to more mature companies to enterprise leaders. So I'm all over the board with I had somebody on last week that created Alexa, and sold it to Amazon. And then I've had supply chain experts, and really the idea is to get in, talk about it, but talk about innovation in general, on what it is, where it's going, and hit on some of these interesting topics. Like we talked about the hologram technology and 5G, and some of those things, and how it's going to change our society.
Yeah.
And how we see entertainment, how we, with one of my podcasts that we did, we were talking about a digital twin, which is an interesting topic. So, utilizing AI and some of these other aspects, and imagine duplicating yourself in a digital form.
Like Black Mirror.
That can do things for you, tasks for you. Yes.
It could be your slave.
Right.
Yeah.
And and that's that's looking like potentially 10 years out.
Wow.
Where it can do all the tasks you don't want to do, but it does it the same way you would do it. And that's an interesting.
Yeah.
Does this digital twin feel?
I don't know about that.
Are there ethical dilemmas here?
But I'm sure that will be a.
For the answer to that, check out his deep dive podcast.
Yeah.
Called Deep Dive Podcast.
In honor of sticking to what we talked about and leaving the cliffhanger for all that
Fascinating
information.
and terrifying.
I asked him if robots are going to take over.
And we'll leave
He
the
didn't think
answer.
they would.
Shh, don't tell him.
Oh, man.
No, Corbett, this has been awesome, man. We've got a lot of things coming. I know you've got a Clubhouse. You're getting on Clubhouse, doing open discussions with some of the people you're having on the podcast.
May 5th.
May 5th, you've got your first one, and that is with the guy who sold Alexa to
Correct.
Amazon.
Yep.
Check out the Deep Dive podcast if you want to learn how to get in with Fortune 100 companies, what they look at, what they're talking about, or if you're just an entrepreneur and you want to hear from someone like me, or I'm sure you'll have Clint on there one day. You got to hear what he's done. He's done some amazing things with where we're at, Storm Roof Systems. But yeah, I mean, you definitely are doing something big with that podcast. I'm excited. Definitely got to figure out how we can do some collab stuff with Hustle Up, with our network, and with some of your connections, and
Definitely
mend that age gap a little bit. You've inspired me to do Kettle Bells. Clint, you want to?
Oh, this is killer. No, this is gold. I've gotten a lot out of this. This is awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess my last question, and we always like to get some kind of clippable content. We've had some already from this, but on top of the last question, which I'm going to ask you, the second to last question is, what is the main advice you would want to give to entrepreneurs looking to do work, either raising capital or doing a pilot with a Fortune 100 company?
I think
in a concise way that we can clip.
First of all, finding what you're passionate about and try to stay in that lane, and not doing, when it comes to pilots, not doing something that's out of your comfort zone. Use your skill sets and what you're good at to go in and pitch for that pilot. If you're not a good pitcher and you aren't the one that needs to be in that role, find a strategic partner that's their skill set, and do it that way. I think that's so many people try to cram it in and do things that aren't within their wheelhouse, and stick to what you know and what you're good at and what's your God-given talent.
Stay laser focused, stick to your strengths, supplement with a team for your weaknesses. And if you don't know
something you're passionate about,
pick something you're passionate about. And if you don't know how to make the connections to get into those companies, come see Corbett.
Yeah.
ATDC. Awesome, man. What is there any question that we should have asked you that we didn't?
No, I think we covered a lot.
Awesome.
I think we're good, man.
That's killer.
Thank you again.
Absolutely. How does someone get in touch with you? Deep Dive is on
Spotify, Apple, and Google. Mm-hmm. So it's Deep Dive Podcast by Corbett Gilliam. You can look it up that way. You can also get me at Corbett, Corbett.Gilliam @atdc.org.
Cool. Awesome. Well, man, this has been great. Since you let me do the intro, you want to close it out?
Hey, you know where to find us at HSTLUP, www.hstlup.com. That is hustle without the values, but there is a U and up. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Corbett. My name is Clint.
Woo-hoo, I'm Jonathan.
And as always, hustle the book up.
Yo.
Woo.